August 2020 marks the 55th year of the beginning of the India-Pakistan War in 1965. On 5th of August 1965, India discovered to its horror that Pakistan had made huge plans to acquire or annex Jammu and Kashmir. That's the subject of Simply Nitin this week. I am Nitin Gokhale. So while many people will remember 5th August 2019 as the day when India changed the status of Jammu and Kashmir and bifurcated the old princely state of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, when Article 370 was tweaked or amended by the central government in 2019, exactly a year ago. But 5th August is also an important date in the history of Jammu and Kashmir and the history between India and Pakistan since 1947. What happened that day? That was the day when Muhammad Deen, a young shepherd, ran into two salwar kameez clad Pakistani terrorists who had come across the ceasefire line, which is now known as the line of control between India and Pakistan. They asked for certain information from that young boy and tried to bribe him with 400 rupees. Muhammad Deen took that money and ran to the nearest police station, Tangmug, which was alerted about these suspicious looking Pakistani men. The police in turn alerted the nearest army post, which sent in reinforcements looking for these two suspicious men who did not seem to be residents or ordinary residents of Jammu and Kashmir. They were caught, and that unraveled Operation Gibraltar, which was hatched by Pakistani army along with the Pakistani intelligence, now known as ISI, the Inter-Services Intelligence. What was Operation Gibraltar? The Operation Gibraltar, planned by the Pakistani army with blessings from President Ayub Khan of Pakistan, was meant to instigate rebellion or uprising in the Kashmir Valley so that the irregulars who were supposed to come from irregulars and Pakistani army troops who were supposed to come across the ceasefire line following the infiltration of these irregulars to seize control of Kashmir Valley first and then of course Jammu, because nearly 40,000 of these irregulars and Pakistani army troops were supposed to come wave after wave into Jammu and Kashmir to help what the Pakistanis thought would be an uprising by the local residents of Jammu and Kashmir. Unfortunately for Pakistan, that did not happen. Muhammad Deen caught or informed about these two irregulars and the plan was unraveled. Some 200 miles away in the Naushera sector at Narien, two other Pakistani regular army officers were caught by another civilian, or at least he alerted about them to the local army authorities. They were caught, and then suddenly the Pakistani plan was well known to everyone in Jammu and Kashmir. The army, which was thinly deployed, the Indian army that is, thinly deployed across Jammu and Kashmir, it had just two divisions, remember, 25 division in Rajouri and 19 division in Baramulla. Unlike the heavy deployment of the regular army and the Rashtriya Rifles across Jammu and Kashmir in today's time, the Indians did the next best thing. They caught hold of these infiltrators who were, of course, spotted by the civilians, and then took their interviews to broadcast their interviews and the entire plan on All India Radio to be broadcast across the world. Pakistan was exposed, and of course, then the war followed in August and September of 1965, which India and Pakistan fought across Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir. But there's a long story to that war also. The war actually had begun in a way in February and March of 1965. in a distant place called Kutch, the run of Kutch, which is in Gujarat, bordering the Sindh province of Pakistan. That time, Pakistan, flush with new arms and platforms supplied by the United States, thought that India was at its weakest in 1964, 1965. Remember, India had lost a war against China in 1962. Pandit Nehru, who was India's first Prime Minister, had died a broken man, humiliated and betrayed by the Chinese. And Lal Bahadur Shastri had become India's second Prime Minister in May 1964. Shastri was a diminutive man, and General Ayub, later Field Marshal Ayub, thought, along with his young and boisterous Foreign Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, that this was the right time to wrest Jammu and Kashmir from India's grip. And they were, of course, helped by the fact that Pakistani economy was doing well. They had been supplied with latest weaponry, pattern tanks, guns, even latest aircraft by the United States. And India seemed to be at its weakest at that point in time. New leader, inexperienced leader, the army trying to recover from the huge military rout that it had suffered in Tawang or in Kameng sector in Arunachal Pradesh and in Ladakh. And of course, the economy not doing too well. So both Ayub and Bhutto thought this was the right time. Bhutto was persuasive enough to convince Ayub that this was the right time to launch an all-out attack in Jammu and Kashmir and win back or wrest back Jammu and Kashmir. Unfortunately for both of them, this did not work out. The Indian Army had already started expanding from November 1962, and by end of 64, early 65, it was in the midst of one of its massive expansions. From about 300,000 or 3 lakh troops, the Indian Army was planning to become an 8 lakh strong army by end of 1965. One corps was raised at that point in time. Many new divisions were raised by the Indian Army. They were being armed and supplied by the United States, ironically. I had spoken about this in one of my previous episodes, how intelligence cooperation between India and United States had helped India to set up some of the intelligence agencies. But what I did not talk about at that point in time was that India was also given hardware and arms and ammunition by the United States and United Kingdom. So India was in the midst of that expansion. It was not fully completed, but India was recovering from the loss of 1962, the national humiliation that it had suffered that time. So when the war broke out in 1965, in Kutch, India was on the back foot. Pakistanis seemed to have the upper hand. That further emboldened Ayub and Bhutto to try and implement Operation Gibraltar. Do go and read Operation Gibraltar. In fact, you can read the entire history of the 1965 war in the book that I wrote in commemoration of 50 years of the 1965 war in 2015. But it was a remarkable campaign that India launched as a counter-attack to the Pakistani design. And mind you, the first help and the most crucial help came from the people of Jammu and Kashmir, the ordinary Kashmiri. They did not rise in revolt as the Pakistanis had predicted. They in fact helped the Indian Army in the initial stages. Then of course reinforcements were brought in from various other sectors of the army deployment from Arunachal Pradesh, from Assam, from Punjab. And of course the war was fought first in Jammu and Kashmir. And then when India came under pressure on 1st of September 1965, where it seemed that Pakistan was almost breaking through the Akhnur bridge to cut off the Kashmir Valley, India, at the insistence of Prime Minister Shastri, opened a new front in Punjab, which is opposite Pakistan, Punjab. And there's this delightful story of how when India opened that front, 4 Jat Battalion, which was at the forefront of that attack near Lahore from Amritsar, when they crossed the Ichogil Canal, the Jats were so swift in their attack and so quickly they traversed the distance that they went across into Pakistan and at a place called Batanagar, and that name was because there was a Bata shoe factory. The Jats halted because they didn't find any resistance from the Pakistanis. By the time the Jats reached Bhatanagar, there was nobody to fight. So they went into the factory, and these soldiers, those who survived, tell this story that they started trying different kinds of shoes and boots in that Bhatanagar factory, which of course then India decided that Lahore was not the ultimate objective, and they had to come back from there. But there were so many other stories in that 1965 war. But remember, it was the people of Jammu and Kashmir who gave the first breakthrough as far as the intelligence was concerned or information of the Pakistani plan was concerned. We are going to celebrate 55 years of that war, which many people thought was a draw, in a way, a stalemate. But I have said this in this book that India actually won the war because for three reasons. India denied Pakistan the main objective that they had. They did not allow Pakistan to wrest Jammu and Kashmir from India's grip. It captured more territory than Pakistanis could of the Indian territory. And it killed more Pakistani soldiers. The number of soldiers killed on the Pakistani side were far higher than Indian side. And remember, India also did a fantastic thing. It proved, the Indian soldiers, the Indian army proved that this is the man behind the machine who is more important. How did that happen? At a place called Khemkaran in the plains of Punjab, the famous Patton tanks or the Patton regiments that Pakistan had acquired got bogged down in the fields, the sugarcane fields, which were flooded deliberately by the Indians. And the Indian tanks, Shermans and Sheffys, the troops and the crew were more used to those tanks. They had used those tanks for a number of years, so they were completely familiar with it. On the other hand, the Pakistanis who had acquired the Patton tanks from the United States, their crew did not have the familiarity of the machine, and they could not really operate those modern machines at that point in time the way they should have done optimally. And therefore, it is now, if you go to Punjab, there is a place called Patton Nagar, where the Pattons met their Waterloo, literally. And they were demolished there. The famous Patton, the one division of Pakistani army was demolished in those Punjab floodlands or the Punjab fields. And of course, the rest is history. There are several other stories of valor and bravery. But why I'm trying to draw your attention to this little known fact about what happened on 5th of August 1965 was the fact that the people of Jammu and Kashmir remained with India, and they actually helped the Indian army and the Indian security forces to keep Jammu and Kashmir within the Union of India. And that contribution must be remembered. On the day when everybody will be talking about how Article 370 was abolished, and how Jammu and Kashmir's status was lowered, and how Jammu and Kashmir has become Union territory. Remember, the people have always been with India. There may be a smattering of people, a smattering of leaders who think of separatism or trying to have a separate and autonomous Jammu and Kashmir which is not aligned to India or Pakistan. But the people from those days have remained with India. The common people, the general people. And that's the lesson from the 1965 war. That's something that I wanted to share with you on Simply Nitin. But again, do keep sending your feedback, your comments, and of course keep liking us on our social media platforms. I'll come back with more such interesting and little known facts of history, both in terms of military and civil developments that have taken place in India's history since 1947. Until the next time, it's goodbye.